Now, looking back at my watch collecting journey, I would say the time where I became the most serious or started to get more serious about watches was when I was in college as a student. And when you're a student and you're starting to get into watches, it is a challenge to say the least, because you have all these desires of things you want to own, but then when you look over at your bank account, yeah, there's a lot that you're not gonna be able to get. So I understand those kind of growing pains that come associated with being a student. And I know many people that are watching this channel are students themselves. So what I wanted to do was look at some of the best watches for students in this video. So how this is going to work, I have 3 different segments of types of students, so we can look at this from a very holistic point of view. So you first have your high school students, so these are gonna be people typically under 18 years old. There are certainly people out there that are watching this channel that are into watches, and that's amazing to see. Then our next portion, we're gonna look at college or higher education, and then to round out the list, I wanna look at post-grad. I know many people are in medical school, maybe in residency, or also maybe pursuing a post-grad degree, so I wanted to also keep them involved as well. I'm gonna create 4 to 5 recommendations for each one of these different segments, and I'm gonna try to be at least in alignment with price. I know price is gonna be the #1 thing. I know there's a lot of costs that come associated with going into school, so just keep all that in mind. I'm gonna try to be reasonable, but also at least have something that can be perhaps ambitious and feasible at that range. So before proceeding any further, I have a huge announcement to share. TeddyBaldassarre.com is now an authorized dealer of Longine. So Longine is a brand that I've wanted to add to the site for quite some time. I have a tremendous amount of respect for them as a brand. Their mix of quality, strong contemporary, and heritage designs with a history that's hard to rival leads to them being one of the more compelling brands in watches, in my opinion. We have a pretty curated collection on our site, having some of my personal favorites, such as their heritage pieces like the compressor style Legend Diver, the Sector Heritage Classic, and arguably one of the best Swiss chronos for the money with the Big Eye. Also, we have some of their more contemporary pieces with the Spirit, as well as one of the best representations of a do-it-all watch for $1,000 with the Longine Conquest. Head over to TeddyBaldassarre.com to see the entire collection. So now looking at the high school segment, we have our first watch here, and this is a classic. It's one that comes to mind right away, and that is the Casio calculator watch, the CA53W. Now this watch just fits here for so many reasons. It's a classic, no question about it. It's also in a price range that I believe is gonna be more than appropriate for someone of this age bracket when we're talking about somebody under 18 years old. Having a calculator is going to no doubt be useful in this type of environment as well. Don't let your teachers catch you using this during a test. I'm not responsible for any of that. But for around 25 bucks, it's so hard to beat this watch. It brings a lot to the table, a ton of charm within this design, and now it's achieved, I would say, timeless status. Now next up here, we have a watch from Timex. I'm a huge proponent of this watch, and that is the Timex Weekender. So I owned one of these watches when I was in college, and I loved it for many different reasons. One is it's just so simple, clean, and timeless in terms of what it is going for. Simple white on black, or there are a few different dial variations to go for. Also, you're getting so much versatility when it comes to straps. I put on pretty much any different type of strap when I owned one, and I could not think of really anything that looked bad on it. Sure, it's a little bit more casual, so you can't dress it up to the same degree, but if you do put a nice strap on it, it can do the job for certain types of formal events when you're under the age of 18. The indigo backlight is also an interesting feature, which will create some cool conversation and also be pretty useful in darker environments. But one final point of emphasis on these is that they are loud. So if you're worried about wearing this in a actual academic environment, maybe in the middle of a class or during a test, I would say, when it's very silent, I would not advise that, but a great do-it-all casual watch that just looks great in so many different circumstances. Now for our next watch, we have the Orient Bambino, and the particular version I'm gonna look at here is the Gen 2 version 2. Now there are different versions to go for, of course, and just have some fun, get lost, but the Orient Bambino is just a fixture in affordable watches. It's so hard to beat. Mechanical in-house movement, hacking, hand winding features, solid accuracy for a mechanical movement as well. I think a lot of people overlook how well these perform typically out of the box. I find them performing better than a lot of Miyota or Seiko counterparts, and you're talking about it for around $150 or less dollars. Although that is going to be a bit higher in price for someone in high school or something around there, but say you're working a summer job, most people are spending all their money on Jordans or whatever people spend money on nowadays. $150 is not out of the question for a lot of younger people, especially considering this thing is going to last 4 years. So many products nowadays I see as almost disposable, despite having prices that are rising when associated with what you're getting in return. And whether you're going right into the workforce after school, or say you're going to go to college or something of that sort, this thing is going to last you and even get into your actual career. And that's amazing if you can get a watch like that for around 150 bucks. And now for our next watch here, we have a dive watch. Now there's a couple I was choosing between. I was doing either the Casio Duro or the Vostok. In terms if you're going for design, I'd probably recommend going for the Casio Duro. But if we're talking about going for the cult classic, a mechanical watch as well, which I think creates a lot of cool conversations when you're talking about under $100, because it is quite rare to get that, I think the Vostok makes a ton of sense here. Now, a member of our team, Ben, he always calls this the ramen noodle of watches, and it's so true. When you're talking about somebody who's on a ramen noodle budget, being able to get a watch that's mechanical, in-house movement, proprietary case technology that is going to compress to allow water resistance to 200 meters, there is a cool backstory with this watch and everything that it's being created. Now, in terms of how it looks, I mean, a lot of Vostoks are ugly, there's no question about it. But this is just a watch that I find is not fully appreciated. It's kind of goofy, it's out there, it's not necessarily going to wow anybody on the surface, but as you learn more about it, you wear it, and you just kind of start to get its charm. And I would recommend checking out my video reviewing the Vostok Amphibia. It was a watch that I almost wanted to put down and hate, but when I actually had it on the wrist, you just can't help but kind of find these endearing. And what I loved about it was it allowed me to get back to the rudimentary form of why I loved watches and what got me into it in the first place. And when you can get a watch that can make you have those feelings, I think it just makes it so appropriate for somebody that this is their gateway. It seems so appropriate for this type of scenario, and that's why I think it belongs on a list like this. And now for our last watch for the segment of high school and below, we're gonna be looking at the Seiko 5 Sports with the SRPD 51. So this is the classic Seiko 5 Sports, the models that were just unveiled in the last couple of years. Initially when they were released, I think a lot of people were underwhelmed considering that they saw the case architecture, assumed that it was going to be an SKX replacement, which it really isn't at the end of the day. And I don't think that's what Seiko was going for. And now that the dust has settled there since the release, I think people have now accepted these for what they are. And they're just solid, do-it-all type of watches from Seiko at a price range that is pretty attractive. We're talking $250 to $300 typically that you're gonna find these at. This particular one that I'm referencing is going to be maybe one of the most versatile offerings. There are quite a few different variants that you can go for, but if I'm looking for a watch that I can, at this point, be an investment for my future that I can wear for years and years to come, this would be the one that I would go for. You want versatility. If you only have $200 to $250, $300 to spend, you wanna get something that you can get the most miles out of, and this would be the one to go for. 4R series of movements inside, reliable movements, hacking and hand winding, much better than the 7S26 movements that you're gonna find out there from other Seiko 5s, and I think that upgrade is nice to see here. Water resistance is certainly more than enough at 100 meters. You're also getting pretty wearable dimensions despite the 42.5mm case, going to wear closer to a 40mm case. If you're familiar with any Seiko models whatsoever, that's no news to you. But certainly a great do-it-all watch in the sub $300 range. You pretty much could put any Seiko 5 here. This was just the one that I wanted to go for just because it fell in a nice area and had a design that I think would be appropriate and be in alignment with what many people would want. Now for our next category, we have Undergrads. And just as a little important side note, some of these watches that are going to be mentioned here are kind of like no-brainers, but I feel like that's important when you're talking about somebody who's not gonna have all the money in the world to spend on a watch. You wanna get something that's going to be versatile. Again, you don't wanna have to worry about, oh, what's a watch for this occasion, this occasion. You want that do-it-all type of flair for these watches, and that's kind of what I'm going for here. Now to start us off here, I think Seiko, again, just to segue off of what we were saying mostly about the Seiko 5, once you get into this next tier of going up a little bit more, you might have a bit more money to spend, maybe you got an internship, you got a nice, better paying job compared to some of those early jobs that you're working in high school. I would jump up to the Seiko Cocktail Time family. The Seiko Cocktail Time, if you want a watch that is almost an investment into your future that you could wear into, say, your first professional job, makes all the sense in the world. This is a watch that you can wear throughout your 20s even and not look out of place. It's a fantastic watch and will stack up with watches that are multiples of the price. The dial finishing is maybe the best in the price category of under $500. I have a video saying that, and I will stand by that still today. Yes, it does have a Hardlex crystal, but the doming effect that creates with that combination of dial finish, it's spectacular, no question about it. A watch that looks way more expensive and be better than 99% of what it's going to be on everybody else's wrists. Now, a question I get all the time, what is the best watch for around 500 bucks, especially if I want something Swiss made? I quickly usually recommend brands like Tiso and Hamilton, but if I had to say maybe the one and only as kind of a do-it-all, I would say the Hamilton Khaki Field. And you could go for two options here, the mechanical or the automatic. But I would say for most people, the automatic is going to make more sense, especially for a younger type of individual that just wants the perks of being automatic, not having to manual wind their watch every single day or every other day or so, given the longer power reserve. But also with this automatic version, you're getting 100 meters of water resistance. On a different type of strap, you could probably get this more into a dressier category, but at its core, on maybe a NATO strap or something of that sort, this can look just as sporty as a dive watch in some circumstances. There's so much flexibility with just how these look. Hamilton and what they're producing in this price range just provides so much peace of mind as well. 80-hour power reserve, Swiss-made movement, sapphire crystal, 100 meters of water resistance from a brand with great pedigree and heritage in the realm of field watches. It's so hard to beat this for around $500. I would say this is the easy choice for many people. And if I had to just shut off my brain and just say what's the best no-nonsense option, this might be the one. But another brand in this category that does a fantastic job that has not been mentioned yet is Tiso. Under $1,000, Tiso does it all, simply put. They might not be as collectible as Seikos and Hamiltons and doesn't have that kind of vintage aesthetic that some of those designs might have, but you cannot put down what Tiso delivers consistently across all of their different collections. Any Tiso under $1,000 is going to be pretty solid. When you get into their mechanical pieces especially, they stack up very well. And the one I'm gonna talk about here has been a model that has just taken over in 2021 for a watch under $1,000, and that is the Tiso PRX. I will preface it first by saying that this is not going to be as versatile from a dressy standpoint as some other models, like say like the Visidate, maybe looking at something like the Lilac as another example. But if you just want all that sporty kind of flair, you like that classic kind of integrated bracelet look, which is incredibly popular right now, this is a no-brainer. And in terms of finishing for price, probably maybe the best that you're gonna find under $1,000 for a bracelet and case style. You have a quartz option as well as the Powermatic 80 version. Essentially, the only difference is going to be the movement on the inside. Do you value going for the mechanics, the romantic idea of what a watch should be, or do you want to go for same delivered end result for the most part, different dial though too, but want to save some money in the process? That's pretty much all you're really deciding between dial surface as well as the movement on the inside. If you are just speaking logically, the PRX quartz is going to be the one to go for. But if you're going for something that's gonna have that romantic flair, you like mechanical watch, you like the idea of what it means to own a mechanical watch, then you can go for that one. But these watches have been so popular, they've been selling really well on our website as well, on teddybaldassarre.com, and have been coming with pretty much universal praise. They are larger on the wrist, they're around 40 to 41 in terms of actual wearability. Certainly would recommend checking out the video reviewing them. A variety of different dial colors to choose from, but I'm a big fan of these watches, and Tiso just seems like every single year they have this flagship model that is just great, like the Tiso Gentleman was last year, and the PRX seems to be more of that, but in 2021. Now next up we have another watch from Seiko, and that is the Seiko Baby Alpinist, the SPB 155. Now I've reviewed a different model from this family on the channel before, would certainly recommend checking that out. But these are great do-it-all watches. A lot of the same upsides that came with the Hamilton mentioned a little earlier, same is going to be said here. Nice long power reserve, not gonna be as long of 80 hours, but around 70 hours for these. But you are getting a sapphire crystal, 200 meters of water resistance. Love the looks of these. Wearability is also going to be smaller than that of the Hamilton Khaki Field Auto, which is going to have a more extended lug-to-lug dimension. You could go for a Seiko dive watch here instead, but I like the versatility of being able to wear this in a variety of different environments and kind of walking that line of sporty and dressy depending on what dial color you go for. So big fan of these watches. And now for the last watch in this undergrad tier, looking at Tiso again, and I'm gonna have two different approaches. The sporty route versus the kind of do-it-all route. We already looked at the PRX, which is kind of the newest and greatest thing from Tiso, but two longer standing models in the collection, one not as long, but one a little bit longer. First with the C-Star 1000, great do-it-all Swiss-made dive watches that come with fantastic specs, 300 meters of water resistance, ceramic bezel, which is pretty nice to see in this price range, variety of different dial colors. It is a bit more youthful too in its approach and just how it looks. These are certainly going to be larger watches though, so fair warning there, but great do-it-all, sporty, looks great. Kind of just to go back to what I said about Tiso earlier, they just always nail it when you're talking about this price range. And then for the other option, I have to mention this watch as well, the Tiso Gentleman Powermatic 80. You can also go for the quartz version, very similar to that of the PRX. You're not really making any compromises other than just the movement. So if you don't care about the mechanical elements within, then you're not gonna have to worry about that. The great thing about the Powermatic 80 is I would say it is going to be the most versatile of maybe any of the watches on this list. You're getting 100 meters of water resistance. It's sporty with some of the polish elements, with the brush elements, but also is more dressy compared to something like the Hamilton Khaki or even the PRX or even the Seiko Alpinist. Also, the movement on the inside is going to be an elevated Powermatic 80. It's not the base Powermatic 80, so you're getting that silicium hairspring on the inside, up shock resistance, while still getting a lot of the same benefits that come from the Powermatic 80 family of movements. Now for our last segment, we have postgraduate, or I almost want to say graduation watch, because many people I find in this range are trying to mark the occasion and accomplishment of getting through school completely and starting their career finally after all of that higher education. So with that being the context here, I'm gonna look at this a bit differently because this is just as much a investment into what you're doing currently, as well as marking the occasion and looking ahead to the future, a watch that you can have maybe for your entire life. And with this being the case, this is going to be the highest end of the segments that we're gonna be looking at. I know everybody's situation is different when it comes to money. I'm very conscious of that and I understand it, but just wanted to kind of create a variety of different options here. Now, a brand that delivers a fantastic product for around $2,000, have a variety of different options to choose from, primarily within their heritage collection, is going to be Longine. And a model that I have always loved, I think looks fantastic in a variety of situations, is the Longine Heritage Classic Sector. This is a model that I've reviewed on this channel before, and I was just blown away with what was being delivered. It's a beautiful watch. I love a good sector dial, and this was one that was probably, with the JLC master control date, was one of the models that was delivering on this trend and making a fantastic end product as a result. Pretty nice wearability of 38.5 millimeters, can walk the line of both dressy and casual. Water resistance does leave a bit to be desired for a watch that is going to be walking this line, but it makes up for it in other areas. Sapphire crystal, getting an automatic L893, which is an ETA A31501 movement. That's going to be the 64-hour power reserve movement that's going to be made by ETA for Longine, going to be operating at that kind of unconventional beat rate of 25,200 vibrations per hour as well. So you're basically getting proprietary movement technology in a price range that is nowhere near the typical price range that comes associated with that type of just perks. And then to piggyback on that, you're also getting a design that I think is going to be as timeless as it comes from a brand that is so rich in its history and heritage with Longine. Love this watch for this type of individual. Although a bit different, I think this next brand that we're looking at here is similar in terms of what it is delivering for the price, as well as not having these pretentious tones that sometimes is associated with products that, as you start getting into around $2,000 and up, just become a part of the equation, which I think is not the greatest thing when you're maybe just getting started off with your career. You don't want a watch that draws attention to yourself. You just want a great piece that can just deliver on what you're paying. And a great option here for me is the Oris Aqua. Oris as a brand is appreciated, but also underappreciated, meaning that I think for enthusiasts, they're just quick to understand what Oris is delivering, but from a mass market perspective, I don't think this brand gets as much play as they should. They're so in line with what the enthusiast wants, and when you're looking at a lot of these bigger brands, I think so many lose the pulse on what that means and what really is the driving force for a lot of the brand's just highest affinity clients. Oris doesn't forget that, and there's a reason why the Oris Aqua is the best-selling model for this brand. It really sets the standard for what a dive watch in the $2,000 price range should be. Well-finished bracelet, integrated, but you're not gonna really want anything else besides it because it is fantastic. Solid finishing all throughout, ceramic bezel, variety of different dial colors as well as case sizes to choose from. You now also have the Sellita options as well as the Caliber 400 series. Depending on what you care and value more, you can just make that decision for yourself. But as an entry-level dive watch from an attainable luxury to luxury perspective, the Oris Aqua is a great do-it-all choice. Now, I am never a fan of when a company tries to force a product for a particular segment and just doesn't make any sense. Fortunately here, this product does make sense and is marketed to that particular group of people, which are college graduates or people that are graduating from school and they want something to mark the occasion, and that is the Nomos Club Campus. So the Club Campus series is a model family that is that entry door into the world of Nomos. I think many people commonly associate the brand with their minimalist style dress pieces that are around that $2,000 price point, but just south of that, you can start getting into the classic Nomos Club series. The Club Campus is going to be almost a fun additional take on that club family of watches. A couple points that you're gonna see a lot is the reverse California style dials. You'll see some more colorful dial variations, while also getting some different case options as well. You can get a sapphire case back or a solid case back if you wanted to opt for some engraving, which could be a great way to mark the occasion. But for around $1,500 to $2,000, depending on the setup that you go for, these are beautiful. You're also getting an alpha manual movement on the inside, which from a movement finishing standpoint, while also factoring in the idea that Nomas are producing these movements in their facility, despite kind of using the existing architecture as inspiration from the Etta Pazoo 7001s. There's a cool backstory about how Nomos navigated this and went this direction because they simply could not get the supply needed for those movements. So they opted to invest the millions of dollars to be able to produce this in their own facility to stop the challenges that came with producing their watches, mostly at that bottleneck of getting movements. 100 meters of water resistant sapphire crystal as well to go on top of that. No question, nice versatility here, and the entry door to the great brand that is Nomos. So now for these next two brands, these are, I would say, solidified luxury products. They're gonna be higher in price, but I would say are probably two of the best do-it-all pieces from a luxury perspective if you just have to get one to maybe start as a foundation for your watch collection. And the first is going to be the Tudor Black Bay. I'm gonna keep this open in terms of which one you wanna go for, whether it's the original Heritage 41s or if you wanna go for the 58. I have a whole video looking at the entire overview of the 58 collection, if that would be of interest. But the Black Bay is probably the best example of a modern classic in the world of watch design and manufacturing. This has completely reworked how I would say myself, as well as many other people, have looked at the Tudor brand. Now, has Tudor really went maybe a little crazy with the amount of designs within the Black Bay collection? Yes, they're certainly beating it to death a bit, but there's a reason behind that. It's so rare to have a design that epitomizes what your brand delivers, or just to have an actual true icon. Look at all the different brands out there that really struggle to find their identity and are going through all this different just creation of design, and you always have the questions of like, why are they doing that? For many years, Tudor was that brand. They threw out a lot of things in the past, like the Hydronauts that not many people were loving, and they even pulled out of the entire US market for over a decade, with the Black Bay being the mark of that return. Now you're also getting manufacturer caliber movements with steady power reserves on the inside. I'm a huge fan of the Black Bay, and I think it's a great first luxury watch. But now for our final watch here, we have the Omega Aqua Terra. Now this is an expensive watch. If we're talking about a new variant, we're looking at north of $5,000. There are some good pre-owned options as well, but the reason why I wanted to include this watch on the list here today is because it is able to do pretty much everything. And if you're somebody that managed to get out of school without a lot of debt, I know that's harder to come by these days, and maybe you found yourself getting through med school, paid for, you got a scholarship or something of that sort, and you're now into a high-paying job, and you want something that's going to work when you're near all of this high-tech equipment, have resistance against magnetism and things of that sort, I think the Aqua Terra is a great do-it-all piece. 150 meters of water resistance, variety of dial colors to choose from, coaxial movement on the inside, true professional METAS certified movement. Finishing is going to be some of the best in this price range, while also getting a brand that I don't think exudes the same kind of, I mean, sorry for no other way to say it, but douchebag status that some other brands can from the luxury segment, while still getting a product that is every bit just as good as anything else the competition is throwing out there. The Aqua Terra to me is probably that no-brainer type of luxury watch that will have you checked off in pretty much every occasion. But all right, guys, that is my list looking at some of the best watches for students in 2021. Love to see comments down below. If you did appreciate this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. That really does help out the channel. I don't just say that, so I really would appreciate that. Also, if you want some additional options, especially under $500, I'd recommend checking out the blog down below, looking at 40 of the best automatic watches under $500. Also check out TeddyBaldassarre.com. We're an authorized dealer of many brands mentioned in this video, including Hamilton and Tiso, as well as many other options that certainly would be suitable choices as well. We have quick and fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support, full factory warranty for all the products that we are carrying. So if something goes wrong, you're not having to pay the bill for it, you will be covered. And finally, 9 out of every $10 that we generate goes right back into the content that we're creating here to help foster up a new generation of watch enthusiasts in the process. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I'll see you all very soon.